3 weeks after winning the Super Bowl, the Chiefs are back at it, along with 31 other teams at the NFL Combine. Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast presented by Big O Tires. It's Monday, February 24th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Chiefs beat writers Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell are en route to the Combine in Indianapolis. That's where NFL coaches and officials will scout, test, interview, and observe more than 300 prospects. It's become such a popular event that much of the action, the workouts, will be televised by the NFL Network in prime time. Herbie and Sam are there to report and write about the event, but before heading out, they stop by the SportsBeat KC studio for a preview. Here are Herbie and Sam. We're here with Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell before they hop in a car together here from downtown Kansas City and pointed east on Interstate 70, not stopping until they reach Indianapolis and the NFL Combine. I can't thank you guys enough for stopping in before you hit the road. Herbie and Sam, what are you looking forward to most, not from the Combine, but spending 7.5, 8 hours together in the car?
Just a constant smell of smoke?
Yeah. It'll be like family vacation. That's the way I see it. We might have to take some detours.
Our group text is going to get a lot of complaints. Blair, you, Vahe, and Melly should just be ready for constant updates, probably.
But we're not going to be alone. You know who else is going with us? Matt Derrick.
How about
I thought you knew that.
Oh, that's terrific.
So does this count as shotgun?
Yeah, Sam called shotgun.
Well, I'm sure that you'll have a ball in the car on the way. After all, you shared a house for 8 days in Miami just
was it 8
earlier
days?
this month.
I thought it was like 10 days.
It seemed like 20. There were witnesses there, though.
You guys are heading to the NFL Combine, and look, Chiefs fans have been in tune with the Combine as long as there has been a Combine, but maybe it's a little bit different feeling this year with the Chiefs coming off the Super Bowl victory. Herbie, let me ask you, just take us through a Cliff's Notes version of what the Combine is, why it exists, and what are the Chiefs hoping to get out of it?
Well, the Combine first came into existence because it allowed teams to meet prospects and the all-important medical evaluations. Forget all the TV glamour you see with workouts. That's not what the Combine is about. The Combine is designed for teams to get to know players in formal interviews and medical evaluations, because they don't prod them during the college football season. And this is an important tool for the draft. This is all part of the draft evaluation process. Did I just say evaluation process? Oh, my goodness. But that's basically what it is. You will get a lot of, Sam McDowell ran a 4.24. But you know what? I always go back to Herm Edwards, when the first Combine I covered, when he was the head coach here. And he said, hey, this is a football pageant. That's all it is. It's a beauty pageant. You see a lot of players running around in shorts and T-shirts. We already know what they can do because of the tape. The workouts just reinforce what you see on the tape. So there aren't going to be that many draft decisions that are going to be changed because of what a player does with a drill. It's all about the formal interview process and medical evaluations.
I thought it was a 4.23, Sam, by the way. I thought you ran a tick faster than what you got credit for. Let's establish not every NFL draft prospect is at the Combine.
Correct.
What's the total numbers? It's in the neighborhood of 300 or so?
Yeah, last year there were 333. My understanding is it's 330 plus again. But just because a player doesn't get invited to the Combine doesn't mean he won't get drafted. Because as Dane Brugler likes to always point out, he's a former NFL draft analyst for DraftScout.com, and now he's with The Athletic. He always points out every year in the draft there's 100 players that get selected by a team that were not invited to the Combine. So you don't have to always say, oh, these guys they're draftable. Not all the time.
Well, and I think one of the cool things to me about the Combine is not only do you see players from Clemson and Alabama and Oklahoma and Notre Dame, Ohio State, but also you catch the occasional Northwest Missouri State guy there, the Pittsburgh State guy, Washburn. I mean, guys that look, there's tape on them too, but the Combine does give them an opportunity to talk to NFL, scouts and NFL personnel?
Yeah, the key thing with the interview process, and this is where a lot of people always get confused, you have two types of interviews. You have your informal interviews and the formal. The formal interviews by NFL regulations, and they changed it this year. In years past, it used to be 60 formal interviews. That means a team can only have 60 formal interviews of the 300-plus prospects that are there. This year, it's 45. And the reason why it's 45, and they gave them 18 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes, is because the NFL, being what they are, they're a runaway cash cow, they decided to move the workouts, which used to televise during the day, it's now prime time. And that's now going to take away time for teams to meet with players. So they had to be selective before, meeting with 60. They're going to have to be ultra selective now, meeting with 45.
Describe to us, though, because you've been covering this for over a decade now, what the difference between formal and an informal interview is.
A formal interview could be if a team bumps into Blair Kerkhoff, quarterback from Purdue University. If I happen to see you walking in the hallway and we start talking, that's an informal interview. A formal interview is set up with the player and his agent, and they meet with coaching staff, general managers in the hotel room. That would be considered a formal interview. And that actually extends after the combine is over, after pro days are over, and before the draft, because the team can bring in 30 players for interviews as well. They just can't work them out.
I wish I knew off the top of my head somebody who flunked an interview, whose career may have been derailed because of a bad interview. I imagine it's happened. We hear about Wonderlic scores having,
correct,
hurting players.
We hear about a lot of weird, even borderline inappropriate questions asked about these guys at these interviews. That's kind of what has stuck out to me over the past 4 or 5 years, especially.
But here's the thing about formal interviews, and there is some value in figuring out who the Chiefs talk to or whom a team talks to, because I remember before I left this beat, Therese Paylor, good friend of ours, we used to always monitor who did the Chiefs talk to at the combine. And sure enough, they showed up somehow. They got drafted, because the Chiefs are getting to know the player. Yes, they can talk to a lot of players, but if they're showing interest in a player in Indianapolis, they're on the radar. I mean, there's hardly, you can't really dispute that. They're on the radar.
But doesn't mean that information can slip through the cracks, or, we think about Kareem Hunt. I'm sure they talked to him at the combine. Marcus Peters, who had some issues as well. That can happen as well. There's the combine, and then individual colleges have their pro days, and everyone will have one of those, right? Missouri will have one. K-State, KU, they'll all have pro days. Now, if a draft eligible college player didn't go to the combine, he can work out at the pro day for teams, right? And that, in fact, that does happen a lot.
It happens a ton.
Because there are no, what we know is there's 6 Missouri players going to the combine, I think 2 from KU and none from K-State, which
makes me want to cry.
I know, says the K-State grad. But it just seemed, but that doesn't mean Kansas State prospects or draft eligible players won't get seen by NFL personnel.
Yeah, absolutely correct, because scouts will converge, general managers will converge on these local schools. The Chiefs will have a presence there because it would be inexcusable for them not to be there when it's in their backyard. But here's the kicker. If one of these 6 Mizzou players puts up phenomenal times at the combine, they'll typically stand by that and will not work out at their pro day at Mizzou. What they will do, though, is that they will have the opportunity to, once again, talk to the scouts there.
I want to talk about one specific player from Mizzou and a couple other players after we take a break. So we'll be right back with Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell. Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of SportsPass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Back with Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell, and we're talking NFL Combine because these guys are about to hop in. What kind of car are you taking?
My Jeep Grand Cherokee, baby. It's a Jeep thing.
Taking the Jeep to Indianapolis. Have you got the places that you're going to stop picked out? To the White Castle in Boonville, perhaps?
Oh, heck yeah. White Castle. That's a must. That is a must in Indianapolis.
Can't wait.
Get that palate ready. Get that stomach, and get those bathroom stops identified soon after. So, all right. As we were talking, Herbie took us through what the Combine was about in the first segment. Now I want to kind of drill down a little bit into some individual players and what the Chiefs might be doing at this Combine. But we left it off talking about Missouri K-State. Sam, there's a guy that I know you're really familiar with because you've written about him. Missouri linebacker Cale Garrett is going to be at the Combine. This strikes me as an important event for him because he missed the final, 6 or 7 games.
Because of his injury. But what's funny about him, and the story I wrote about him that you and I were discussing before we started recording, I covered him in high school. That was my last year covering high school. Was his senior year at Kearney. And he didn't have much college interest. He was going to Navy, but he only had, I think, maybe 2 or 3 total offers. And it wasn't until 3 or 4 days before signing day that Mizzou finally shows interest in him. He had been told he was too slow to play linebacker at the college level. He has a phenomenal college career, especially given that. Heck, he was playing as a freshman there. And now 4 years later, we're talking about him at an NFL Combine. I still, because of what I just said about maybe some colleges not being interested, I'm most interested to see what he runs in the 40. But he's a really strong kid. He was a state qualifier in wrestling. So I think the other drills he could do pretty well in, especially the drill that apparently now is going to be on prime time with the bench press. Which, God, if you're sitting in front of your TV watching guys bench press,
imagine paying to watch it though.
So wait a second, people pay to watch the Combine?
Oh yes,
in attendance. Yeah,
yeah. The NFL opened up fan observation, I think maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, so you will see, and Sam will see this. Because as we're walking through the convention center, you'll have long lines of people waiting to get in there to watch workouts. It's impressive, but at the same time, I don't think I would pay money to watch.
I know I would not.
Well, and get back to Garrett here. I mean, we saw the value of him to Missouri this year when he suffered his injury. I think it was against Troy. I think it was in a non-conference game.
He finished the game.
The game. And Missouri ended up beating, I think, Ole Miss the next week, and then didn't win again.
The defense wasn't the same.
Wasn't the same. They lost 5 in a row before beating Arkansas in the season finale, costing Barry Odom his job.
Right.
That's how good Cale Garrett is, and that's how much Missouri missed this guy.
It's to me, he's going to stand out probably more on his game film than he is in a Combine-like atmosphere because of what we've already talked about with the athleticism and potentially the speed. But he's a guy with great instincts, a guy that knows the game extremely well, really smart kid. And I think maybe he's a guy that slips further than what he should, and then somebody, once they have him in-house, realizes that there's more value there than what they thought.
I think for him especially, I remember prior to taking the break, we talked about the medicals. It's going to be especially important for him because
that's a good point.
When they start poking and prodding at him, and if he checks out 100%, his value will go up.
Same with Tua, the quarterback that, we're not interested in particularly because he's, I'll tell you
They're
what.
probably set at quarterback.
Yes, but if he ends up being drafted by the Dolphins, which is all the speculation, the Chiefs and the Dolphins play each other next season. So,
sure.
But anyway, there's another player I want to talk about, another local product who is just to me a fascinating player, and anybody who watches college football knows Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
And Butkus Award winner this year, Olathe North graduate, Clemson national champion 2 years ago, was in the national championship game this year. He is an incredible athlete.
Yeah.
He is a 5-position player. He plays all 3 linebacker positions, safety and corner. He has done it all. He is the sort of the future of that position possibly in the NFL. And didn't go to college around here. Ended up helping Clemson, like I said.
Really heavily recruited by the colleges around here.
What, really?
Which tends to happen around here, sadly.
We talked about maybe Cale Garrett, that film would stand out more for him. Isaiah Simmons, I think, is going to tear the combine up because he could either be – he's going to – if he potentially plays linebacker, and I think, like you mentioned, he's going to be kind of a hybrid position. Maybe the way the Chiefs use, like, Daniel Sorensen on packages, I could see him being a fantastic fit for that sort of position. But if he's qualified as a linebacker, he'll run the fastest 40 time for any linebackers. I mean, I remember that kid as a track athlete here in Kansas City senior year, and he was unbelievable. I mean, you've got at a high school track meet 300 kids out there somewhere, and people watched Isaiah Simmons do the triple jump and the long jump. Just a phenomenal athlete. Now, having said that, I didn't expect him to be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. I didn't know he was quite that good, but I think it's a huge credit to the Clemson football coaches for seeing the athleticism and just saying, just get the kid on campus and we'll see where we can put him and what we can do with him. Because I think a lot of people thought in high school he'd be kind of an edge rusher because of the athleticism. And somehow that's not one of the 5 positions that he does play. But I think he's going to be a fantastic NFL player because if he doesn't fit in one spot, you'll find a spot for him somewhere else.
One of the handful of Clemson players who's from either Missouri or Kansas that I give Brent Venables full credit for, Clemson defensive coordinator, former K-State linebacker and assistant coach under Bill Snyder. So, that's a story I'm really looking forward to reading that I know you guys are going to pursue at the Combine. How about the Chiefs? What are the Chiefs looking for? Can we start to tie this to what positions maybe should Chiefs fans pay attention to? Players at certain positions should Chiefs fans pay attention to as they pop their popcorn and crack open one and sit down in prime time to watch
the guys bench press.
Watch the bench press.
For me, there's 4 primary groups. I think we'll start with defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and wide receiver. Not ranked in any special order there, but those are the 4 primary groups that I think the Chiefs have to pay attention to.
Just before you continue, what's funny is I actually had 5 written down, those 4, and I still think they need to address the interior line, even if it's not with your first or second pick.
Okay, that's fair. But those 5, if you had to put them in order, though, I think cornerback's got to be number 1, wide receiver, linebacker, and then defensive line.
In mock drafts that I've seen, way too early mock drafts, of course, we'll have our own.
No exact science to mock drafts, by the way, people.
Right. We'll have our own after the Combine, I'm sure.
If they're all experts, why don't they agree on who's getting picked?
Well,
and why come the picks are never right?
Which was my point. But I did see not a consensus, but if one position seemed to be more associated with the Chiefs than another, it was cornerback. Yeah. Maybe because of the lateness with which the Chiefs will pick, which is 32nd, if they don't make a move, and the talent that would be available there. Look, I think they could pick up a running back at 32, but I don't think that's on their radar screen.
I've seen that on some mock drafts, and to me that doesn't make a lot of sense. Andy Reid in his entire career has never picked a running back in the first round. I don't see why this would be the year. And
the cornerback absolutely makes sense because, as we mentioned in an earlier show, they got 4 cornerbacks slated to be unrestricted free agents. 2 of them are currently starters, Breland and Fuller.
Guys that are probably going to demand more money than what they were making here that might make it difficult for the Chiefs to hold on to. I don't know that Rashad Breland comes back, even though I think the Chiefs like him and would like to have him back.
Yeah.
He was on a cheap 1-year deal here. It was a prove-it deal, and he proved it. And he's going to get a bigger contract now, and I think that's why cornerback makes most sense to me, too.
We talked about it last week on our podcast, but Herbie, I think it was you that brought this up, and you're absolutely right that you have got to get value in your draft class to compensate for the free agent losses, right?
It's your cheapest workforce.
Right. I mean, that has to happen. So I'll give you a name of somebody to keep an eye on who might be available to the Chiefs at 32nd, and Missouri fans will be familiar with him. It's a cornerback from Florida, C.J. Henderson. Yeah. Not in the first, he was not the Ohio State guy.
Mizzou passed a touchdown to him, right?
I've seen his name with a couple of mocks, and he makes sense as, he's not the top guy, but maybe, in the top 5 at his position and could be available to the Chiefs. Drafting 32nd. The Chiefs have been without a first-round pick in the past. And listen, believe me, we are going to have many, many podcasts about the draft. But the fact that the Chiefs are going to pick 32nd, they can't go shopping at the top of the prospect list here, right?
But I think what they can do at 32nd, take a page right out of the New England Patriots book. Trade that pick and accumulate more picks later on in the draft, because as we've mentioned, with so many free agents, and you're going to need to find quality replacements. Do it through the draft, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you get more picks.
There's a reason that 32nd pick is valuable, though, and it's because there's an extra guaranteed year for the rookie deal. Mm-hmm. So especially those teams that are targeting a late quarterback, that's what Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
That pick could have some value, some trade value. So I agree with Herbie. They had 2 second-round picks last year, and they both really worked out. They had Juan Thornhill and McCole Hardman. Without a first-round pick last year, they got 2 good players there. To me, that's the sort of package they should be looking for.
Now that you mention it, they got incredible value with those 2 guys. Those 2, Thornhill, I saw him on some all-rookie teams, and we know McCole Hardman is a Pro Bowler as a return specialist. Yeah. So that's as you start to accumulate the reasons why the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, one of them was they drafted well, and those first two picks contributed in a big way to the Chiefs.
When you look at the Chiefs' recent history, and I mean just over maybe the last 5 years or so, they've gotten a lot of value out of second-round picks. I mean, Chris Jones was another second-round pick, and now we're sitting here talking about him getting franchise tagged and how much money can he demand. So just because they don't have one of these first 31 picks doesn't mean that they can't get a Pro Bowl caliber player.
And a lot of players that are selected in the first round, some general managers around the league don't even have those players assigned a first-round grade. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're the cream of the crop. A lot of players will slide. It happens every year.
That's another good point. They could potentially get their 20th guy on their board at 32. Maybe there's 12 other guys that, there's going to be quarterbacks taken in this draft. Chiefs aren't going to have these guys on their board. They're not going to be interested in the Joe Burrows and Tuas of the world. So there's going to be other positions drafted. Now, cornerback, as Herbie mentioned, with the pass-heavy way of the NFL these days, cornerback is a sought-after position by every NFL team. You can't have enough cornerbacks. So we all have identified that as potentially their biggest need, and that's going to be a position where, like you mentioned, Blair, that guy might be the fifth best cornerback. They're not going to be getting one of the 3 or 4, I don't think, best in this draft.
All right, Herbie, how long does this combine last?
It starts Tuesday, and it'll run through the following Monday.
Okay, man,
that's a long time.
It is a long time.
It's like a Super Bowl.
It is a Super Bowl. You guys getting a house together?
No. We're actually staying at separate hotels, man.
Separate hotels. Because he booked his first.
Yeah.
So I crossed that one off the list and then decided from the remaining ones.
Sam asked me, so where are you staying? Send me the information. I send him the information, and then he finally tells, I'm staying downtown. I thought you were staying at my hotel.
And just a month ago, you guys were like under the same roof.
I know, like next door to each other.
Well, at least you'll have each other in the car on the way to and from. All right, Herbie Teope, Sam McDowell, thanks.
Thanks, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to the group that puts together SportsBeat KC, Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Beth Welsh, Chris Pickett, and Randy Mason. And thanks to Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell for stopping by. If you like what you heard, please leave a comment and a like. Those help. We'll be back Tuesday for another episode of SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.